All right, so your warm-up is called repeat, repeat. And what you're going to do is modify the code inside the body of the while loop, the indented code only, without adding any new loops. Change the code so it prints the numbers 1 through 5 4 times instead of printing 0 through 19. And I'll give you a hint. You're going to use the modulo operator. Okay? You're not actually adding any more lines of code. You are just revising what is there, and you will use the modulo operator. Has anybody been able to solve it yet? Okay. Let's go ahead and take a look at this real quick. So right now, it starts off with when it prints 1 through 19. Okay, because it's saying while the number is less than 20, you're going to print the number and then increment by 1. What happens though if we change this, what's in the print statement, to use a modulo. Oops. So num, you're still using the same number, modulo 5 plus 1. I need to add another parentheses. So if you do it like this, remember that what it's doing is it's asking how many times, okay, well, here, what is the remainder after this goes into this? So how many times will 0 go into 5? 0. Well, I shouldn't say 0. You have a remainder of 0. Then you add 1. So that's going to give you 1. Then you're going to increment your variable 1 by 1. So now num equals 1. Then you are going to print 1 modulo 5. How many times does 1 go into 5? 4, with a remainder of 1. So 1 plus 1 then is 2. So it prints 2. And now you're incrementing your number by 1, which makes this 2. Okay? So it's going up. But what happens then when it's 5 modulo 5? We go back down, the remainder is 0. So that's when it restarts at 1. That's how you're going to get it to repeat, by having modulo 5 plus 1. Okay? Everybody have that in there? Raise your hand if you need another minute. Okay. Make sure you hit that submit button. Please make sure you're getting back in that habit. You will want to get out your Canvas ePortfolio because there are 3 terms that you guys have not had yet, and I want to make sure that you get them in there. And y'all are going to focus on the screen for a while first before you go into the program. Okay, so go ahead, once you get that open, look up here. We're looking at controlling loops. We have 3 new vocabs: break statement, continue statement, and a loop else clause. Okay. So we're going to dive a little deeper into while loops, learning some new ways to control how they run. Okay? So remind me, when does a while loop end? Okay, when the condition is met, which is when it's going to become false to come out of it, because when it's true, it's going to continue to run it. But when then it's false, it's going to when the condition is false, it's going to break out. Okay? So we're going to do a little word called guess the game. Guess the word. Game called guess the word. It has a guesser and a clue giver. And the goal is for the guesser to correctly guess a secret word within 30 seconds using clues provided by the clue giver. The trick is that there's a list of words that the clue giver isn't allowed to say. If the clue giver says one of these words, everybody else should make a buzzer sound, and the round ends immediately in a loss. Okay? So you guys are basically like you and the guesser and the clue giver are working together. Okay? So we're going to look at this real quick. If the secret word is comment and clues can't contain these 4 words: document, documentation, ignore, note. Then I might say, if I was the clue giver, I might say something like words you put in your code to describe what it does. If the guesser doesn't get it from that, then I'd keep trying to talk, describing what a comment is. It's code, but it's skipped by the computer. It comes after a hashtag symbol. It makes the code more readable. But if I had said the computer ignores rather than skips, then I would be buzzed, because that's one of the things you can't say. Okay? Any questions about how to play it? We're going to play 3 or 4 rounds, different people each time. Okay? So let's start. Paul, I will let you. Do you want to be the guesser or the clue giver?
I'll be the clue giver.
Okay. All right. Clue giver, Jackson, you are going to be the guesser. So that means you have to turn around that way, and you can't look this way. No cheating. Okay. You're going to have 30 seconds, by the way. It's going to be on the clock. All right. Go.
This is a building most people go to back in the old days whenever you had a bunch of homework to do. No, it's outside of school. These days we just use our computer instead of actually going to this place. What?
No.
No, you can go here to read.
Yeah, just made it. All right. Good. Okay. Leonel, how about you and Paul? Leonel, what do you want? Guesser or clue giver? Clue giver? Turn around. All right. You ready? Go.
It's the main thing of math, but it's specifically
Addition?
what?
Addition?
No.
No, it's like a way to say they come in negatives and positives.
Integer?
There you go. Good job. All right. Okay. One more. Brianna and Victor. Clue giver or guesser? Okay. Victor, turn around. Go.
It's what we're learning now. It's what we've been learning for this past few weeks. The main topic.
I know it's a hard one. You're halfway there. Keep trying to talk about it.
We use things like while. Yeah.
What is the while checking? Oh yeah, time is up. All right. It was a Boolean. that was a hard one. I'm fully aware of that. Hang on one second. Let me make sure. I don't know if I have another one. Yeah, I do have one more. Okay. Forrest and Ethan. What do you want to be? Clue giver or guesser? Yeah. You'll guess? All right. So keep your head away. You are going to give the clues. Okay? All right. Go. Is there anybody that has a clue they'd like to help with? Say it again. For repeating, yeah.
Synonym for trial.
Yep, that would have been it. Yes. Okay. All right. That was it. Y'all are off the hook. Good job. A couple of those were hard, I know. All right. So, what are the 3 possible ways that a round of that game could end? There's 3 ways it could have ended. Say that again. Okay, yep, if they give a forbidden word, that's one way. How's another way? Time. And if they guess the word. Okay, those are your 3 ways. What condition could we use if each second of guessing was an iteration of a loop? What do you think? What condition could we use if each second of guessing was one iteration of a loop? Okay, well, you just named the 3 things that could make it stop, right? So, and what, when we do Booleans, what do we assume that they are in, how do we break out of our loop? We just said this earlier. How does a loop end? When the condition is, it turns false. When it turns false. Yes. Okay. So same thing. Those 3 things happen, it turns it false. All right. So we have a couple new things here. A break statement. A break statement will immediately end a loop. And you actually use the word break. So break allows us to stop a loop even if the condition is still true. Sort of like an emergency exit. We're breaking out of the loop. So when you use break, the rest of the iteration is skipped and the condition is not checked again. The next line of code that runs is whatever comes after the loop. Break is almost always used inside a conditional, so you're only ending the loop early under a certain condition. We could use break if the guesser says the secret word before time runs out, just like we did with the guess the word game. Where else might we use break in the guess the word game? So we could use it if they guess the secret word before time runs out. Where else might we use it? In that same game. Yeah, one of those forbidden words. Yes. Okay. So here is the visualization. You have the while loop. It goes to then, and it goes to if, and then it goes to code, and it iterates again. Okay? But something happens, and then it breaks, and then it immediately quits the while loop and goes to code. So if this inner conditional evaluates to false, then the loop continues running as normal. However, this inner conditional evaluates to true, then break is hit and the program breaks out of the loop, skipping the rest of the iteration and moving on to the code that comes after. So let's go ahead. You've got a little program there. Part 2, change counter. Make sure I got the right one. Part 2, change counter. All right, so if we run this program now and look at it, let's see what it does. It's asking about our pocket change. How many coins do I have? I have 1 coin. It is going to be a dime. And so it tells me I have 0.1 in pocket change. Okay, so it's calculating how much money I have in change, in coins. So, go ahead and take a couple of minutes to experiment. change up a little bit of code, like look through it and see about changing. And then what I want you to do, what happens if the very first coin the user enters isn't one of the options? Okay, the loop ends without counting any money because you see that break down there. Okay. How could we print an error if the coin was unknown? Okay, and then what you could do is add a print statement inside the else block before break. And what technique from the last lesson could this program use with an unknown coin rather than breaking out of the loop? Think about your force correct input. So just going to give you 2 minutes to kind of experiment and see what you can change up to see how this works. All right, can you make any changes there? Were you able to get it to break? Okay. Another vocab is the continue statement. So in a continue statement, you immediately end an iteration. You actually use the word continue. It is similar to break, but instead of skipping the rest of the iteration and ending the loop, it just skips back up to the condition check at the start of the loop. It does not end the loop itself. We're just continuing with the next iteration if the condition is still true. So like the break, the syntax for continue is just the word continue, and we'll usually use it inside a conditional. We use continue to skip a chunk of code towards the end of our loop if a certain condition is true or false. For example, if I'm making a basketball game and my player doesn't have the ball, then the loop controlling the game could use continue to skip past all of the code that deals with shooting, passing, and dribbling. You can also think about it if a smart thermostat looping once every minute detects the current temperature to make sure it matches the desired temperature, then it could skip all of the code that controls the heat or the air conditioning. If I brought my own lunch to school, then I don't need to figure out what I want to buy from the cafeteria's lunch menu. Those are all ways that you could use that. The visualization of it looks almost just like the break, only remember that instead of it quitting the while loop altogether, all it does is quit that one iteration, that one turn, and then it checks the condition again. Okay? All right, so it's worth noting that we already know how to skip chunks of code using conditionals. These two blocks of code are equivalent. They do exactly the same thing. The benefit of using continue comes with more complicated while loops, especially those with nested loops and or nested conditionals. Thinking about our basketball example again, I could use a conditional to check if my player has the ball and keep nesting conditions within that to check if they should shoot, pass, or dribble. That is going to get messy very quickly though, as we'll have conditionals nested in conditionals, all nested within a while loop. Using continue, we can just skip the rest of the iteration if our player doesn't have the ball, and it saves ourselves an indentation headache. Last, we have a loop else clause. So you know what the else clause is, okay? This loop else clause is a clause following a loop that runs unless the loop ends with a break. So you have your while condition, and if that condition is true, you do some things. Else, then do more things or different things. All right. This isn't a tool we'll use very often, but you should know that it exists. The only difference between putting code after a while loop like normal and putting it inside a loop else clause is that code in a loop else clause is skipped if the computer hit a break statement in your loop. If it hit a break, it'll do whatever is outside of the loop. Okay? If there's no break, then, but the condition becomes false, it would do the loop else. Okay? Break immediately ends the loop, and that includes skipping the else clause if there is one. And here is your visualization. This while loop runs through 2 iterations each time with the inner conditional evaluating to false, so the break statement is never hit. Once the while loop's condition is no longer true, the loop continues with the loop else clause. If the loop's inner conditional had evaluated to true, and thus the break statement had been hit, the loop else clause would have been skipped along with the rest of the loop. Okay, let's go ahead and switch to the code view and open the part 3, the button, from the project panel. So if we run this, it says whatever you do, don't press the button. So do you see button number 1? Do you press the button? No. Are you sure? Yes. No. You see button number 2? No. Yes. No. And then I guess it keeps asking me as long as I answer it, don't press the button. But now if I say press the button and it asks if I'm sure, I'm going to say yes and yes. Oh no, it keeps asking me. So who knows where this ends? All right. So this game seems easy, but is it? The goal is not to push the button no matter what through 5 levels. So right now the game gets input from the user, but it doesn't do anything with it. All it does is checks to see if the user presses the button. So directly underneath the first end the game comment. First end the game comment. So that's going to be at line 25. We are going to put in an if. And remember, it should be indented. And it's going to say if press equals Y for yes, then break. Jackson, you got this? Line 25. All right, now what will happen if the user presses the button the first time they are asked? Oops. It is going to put a bug there. Expected. Oh, sorry. Make sure you hit tab on that second one. I did not on the break. So I'm going to say yes, and it ended the program. Okay, because that's that break there. If you press yes or Y or press a button, which is the Y, then it's going to end. Okay, so directly on underneath the move on to the next button comment, that's going to be line 32. We're going to put if sure equals Y, continue. Make sure that you indent continue. Now, what happens if the user says they are sure in this instance? They won't be asked if they want to touch that button again, and the game goes right to the next level, okay? So if I say, no, I'm not going to touch the button, yes, I'm sure, it's not going to ask me that third question. It's going to go straight to the next question. All right, now, let's congratulate the user if they survive all 5 levels without pushing the button. So after the congratulate the user comment, that's down at the very end on line 42, we are going to add our else statement. It is not indented, so it's else, colon, and then indent the next line, print you did it. Now, when do you think this one ends? When will it print you did it? Any ideas? Yeah, if you make it through all 5 rounds without hitting the button. Okay? It's pretty simple. All right. Let me get back. Okay. So, one more time. You had break, continue, and the loop else clause. All right, and then let me go ahead and unlock pitch perfect. So in pitch perfect, you are working on controlling loops. So while volunteering for a pet rescue, you have a vision to form a barbershop quartet of cats. You've automated a pet assistant to find rescue cats to form the group. Let's make sure the assistant only gets 4 cats and that you only buy stage outfits for cats. You have this solution right here. It tells you that, and then it says press enter to start searching. And it gives you several options here. Found a cat and an outfit for 100. I have 400 left. Again, same thing. And now I have 4 cats and $100 remaining. So Lily, Nick, Furry, Emil, and Felix are now members of this quartet. Okay? That's how it starts. What you are going to do then is use continue in the provided while loop to make sure you are only buying outfits for cats. Break out of the loop when you have 4 cats to join the group. Have the pet assistant announce the group once they are assembled. Okay? So over on the right, you have the problem, you have the requirements. Go ahead and get started with that. Notice it uses a library, and it's got a couple of functions that are already in there. All right, who thinks they've found where the continue statement goes? Any ideas yet? Notice that you have a couple of hints over at the left, the dots. So if I click on the dot for 32, it says how would we immediately end this current iteration? Okay. So I'm pretty sure that this is where continue goes on line 32. And remember that we are supposed to break out of the loop if we have adopted 4 cats. So on line 41, or line 40 rather, we would put in if cats equals 4, break. Okay? And then once you're done, check it, make sure it works, and move on to the next part. Hmm. So where did we go? Well, I'm not sure why that came back with an error in the library. Let me see if that does. Oh, I forgot the announcement at the end. That's why. My bad. Oops. No, it still didn't. Let's see. Oops. Are other people getting an error in the library? I'll have to go look for a solution. Okay, go ahead and make sure you move on to the fire escape.